Good evening and welcome everyone to Tech for Good Pills. Tech for Good Pills is a series of events, of interviews for the Tech for Good community. At Tech for Good Pills, we speak with founders and practitioners that are using technology to solve the world's biggest problems. And so we speak with people from the for-profit, non-profit world that share the common feature of really leveraging technology to do good. And today at Tech for Good Pills, we will interview Miriam Redi, who is a senior research scientist at the Wikimedia Foundation. So welcome, Miriam.
Hello.
So before we kick off with the interview, let me just give you some information about the logistics of the event. So the event will last for about 20 to 30 minutes, and we have prepared some questions for Miriam, and but we will also pick some questions from the audience. So whether you're following us from Facebook or from YouTube, please do feel free to put in your questions, and we will be able to see them from the back end and ask them to Miriam live. And so Miriam, as I mentioned, works at the Wikimedia Foundation, and whose goal is to make the internet a better place for free knowledge. So we all know the Wikimedia Foundation in a way or another. I think obviously Wikipedia is probably the flagship product that everybody knows, but I wanted to ask you, Miriam, to kick off, to give us a bit of an introduction about the foundation and the problem you're solving. So I know that kind of your work is really to provide free knowledge for everyone, and the Wikimedia Foundation creates a set of tools to empower people all around the world to create open educational content and help disseminate this content everywhere. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about kind of the problem and your approach at the Wikimedia Foundation?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Giacomo, and thank you.
Sorry, one thing I forgot to say, and you forgive me. So I just wanted to remind everyone that Miriam is with us tonight, and she is speaking from her experience as a senior research scientist for the Wikimedia Foundation, but she's not representing the organization itself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying this, and thank you very much for inviting me to this nice initiative. I am very happy to hear that there are more and more of these initiatives for helping growing the community of practitioners, researchers, and technologists for good. I think we need, especially in these interesting times, we need a lot of these beautiful initiatives. So thanks all for organizing this. So as Giacomo said, I work for the Wikimedia Foundation, and maybe you have heard of the Wikimedia Foundation. If you haven't heard, you have for sure heard of Wikipedia, which is the largest online encyclopedia in the world. Is a free encyclopedia that anyone can edit. And basically, Wikipedia exists as the product of thousands, hundreds and thousands of volunteers that every day create the content that you can read online. And it spans around 300 languages for about a total of, I think, more than 50 million articles. And this is really the product of volunteer work. So I keep being amazed of the amount of positive and very constructive work that these communities do every day. The role of Wikimedia Foundation is essentially to support these communities grow and make sure that they are empowered to maintain, add, and generate the content that you see every day on the encyclopedia. So, for example, there are projects at the Wikimedia Foundation to support new editors understand how to edit Wikipedia. There are projects such as, for example, what they call editathons, that are like hackathons to add new content at scale, or not at scale, but in a single kind of event. Maybe sometimes they are thematic, maybe they are not thematic. And Wikimedia Foundation supports this kind of event, supports grants for local communities to grow, etc. But also Wikimedia Foundation supports, make sure that the content that editors produce every day is actually available to everyone that should have access to. And so it's also making sure that readers around the world can access the content on Wikipedia 24/7. So especially my department, in the technology department, a large part of the technology department is really dedicated to making sure that really the content gets delivered to every device around the world, and in the minimum with the minimum possible latency. We're talking about very small teams in general compared to larger corporations, despite Wikipedia being one of the largest websites in the world, or most popular website in the world. Wikimedia Foundation is between 450 and 500 people as of now. So it's relatively small organizations compared to the other big tech companies. But it's really the teams within the foundations really have the mission of the foundation close to their heart. And among the different services that Wikimedia Foundation provide, obviously there is fundraising and legal support, and also a part of it is dedicated to promote innovation to help editor communities grow and help readers find the content that they need to find. And that is why there exists a research team at the Wikimedia Foundation, which is us. So little advertisement for the team, that basically we're a bunch of computer scientists and physicists trying to bring cutting-edge technology or develop the scientific field so that we can empower free knowledge communities. I can go on forever.
No, this is great. Thank you, Miriam. And I think, just one side note, the Wikimedia's just turned 20 this year. Is that right?
Yes. The Wikipedia turned 20. We had a bunch of celebrations. Obviously, they were all virtual, but it's a great achievement. It started as a pet project, and it became one of the largest websites in the world. So we had a lot of also heartwarming press coverage, identifying Wikipedia as the best place in the world, etc. Obviously, everybody got very emotional about this 20th birthday, but we were very happy to see that.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for giving us an overview. I know the Wikimedia Foundation does a lot, and within that there is the technology department that to some extent helps power a lot of this. And you mentioned a few times the word editors, and I think one very interesting approach or very interesting aspect of your approach is that you serve these editors to help them and empower them to create content, but the things that you look at are not just how many people are creating content or how much content is created, but also who is creating this content. So you put a lot of emphasis on the diversity of the editor community and to create equal opportunities for all of them. So I want to ask you, why this is important from a knowledge perspective.
Oh yeah, thank you. This is a great question. So maybe I can start by answering with some statistics, as all people in the data world do. So in a recent research that we did, we found that 75% of the requests that come to our site come from users, people that self-identify as men. And so there is a substantial gender gap in the readership volume in Wikimedia sites. But eventually editors were former readers. So when we look at this divide among editors, it becomes even wider. So the proportion of non-men in the editor community is very wide. And this gender gap has implication, obviously, also on the content that we see every day, right? The gender gap is just one of the aspects of on the diversity front. We actually identifying a bunch of these inequalities or knowledge gaps, that we call them knowledge gap in our jargon, that are the kind of types of inequalities that we can find in Wikimedia projects, in readers, contributors, and content. And these go from the gender gap to the geographic gap, So a lot of editors come from certain areas of the world, and generally the most wealthy areas of the world. A lot of editors come from countries where the primary language is English, and a lot of editors necessarily have to have certain level of technical skills and internet literacy in order to be able to access the site. Now, one of the strategic direction of the Wikimedia movement is called knowledge equity. And knowledge equity is essentially pushing us to include in Wikimedia projects all those content and people that have been left out by by structures of power and privilege, and try to break down the social, political, and technical barrier preventing people from editing and accessing free knowledge. And this is kind of important because, as I was saying, the readers that become editors, so the editor population, is kind of reflects the type of content that we see every day. And if we want to promote a place where everyone in the world can have access to the knowledge that they need, we necessarily have to have diversity in content, and we necessarily want to give everyone the opportunity to be a content creator. And by doing so, at some point, we will try and break these inequalities. So the more diverse content might bring more diverse readers, which brings more diverse editors. And so it's a kind of cycle that once started can help improving diversity and bridging those inequalities.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how when you kick off the process, it feeds on itself and gets better and better over time. But it's quite difficult usually to really kick it off. So what are you doing to establish this virtual cycle?
Yeah, so there are a set of initiatives at different levels. I mean, there are sub-communities of editors that are really trying to, for example, diversify the content, making sure that women in science, I always have this example for obvious reasons. For example, women in science are well represented on Wikimedia projects. So there is a grassroots type of initiatives that actually emerge from the editors community. The Wikimedia Foundation is also trying to promote grants and promote research that can help on this front. Within the research team, we can help kind of in a way systematize the way in which we understand these inequalities. So we can first kind of try to classify these inequalities, and next we can find how to use data to better quantify these inequalities. So the example I gave you before about understanding the gender gap in readership and editorship is just one of the initiatives to essentially help the foundation and the movement getting enough data so that they can make decisions about what areas of content to prioritize, what kind of events to prioritize, what kind of projects to prioritize in order to bridge gender gaps. And so so quantifying the data part becomes very important because it really boils down this complexity of knowledge equity into a few numbers that people can easily understand, people and organizations and partners can easily understand. And then there are ways from a computational perspective to try and automate, for example, recommendations of the content that is missing for certain minorities, for example, or to help with content translation, for example, or for example, to make sure that we can support new editors by recommending simple tasks that they can do, for example, adding images or adding links. So technology can help a lot on this front as well.
Okay, I see. So thank you. You give us a good overview of Wikimedia as a whole and kind of your approach and your kind of principles behind free information. So at this point, I usually ask our guests to share a best practice that they think could benefit other people in the Tech for Good community. So maybe here we can drift a little bit more towards your work as a research scientist. So this is what gives the series also its name, so Tech for Good pills. So I would ask you to share one of these gems that you have learned along your journey.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there are many that I could share. I think one of my favorite, especially that highly relates to everyone in technology, is about the importance of transparency and openness. So as you might know, if you have worked on Wikipedia research or Wikipedia data, most of the data that we have on our site is public for everyone to use. And this empowers not only editors, developers, community that can build tools for Wikimedia community to improve their work, but also it empowers researchers and practitioners to advance the field at so many levels. So for example, a lot of Wikipedia data is used to train large-scale models, right? And with all the biases that imply, but this is another discussion. And then basically the research community beyond the research team at the Wikimedia Foundation can use this data to bring science and innovation in the context of advancing free knowledge community. And so we are a big fan of doing everything open in the research team. You can read about our research pretty much every day. There is something new. Even before the research is published, you will read the main results, because we really want to have this openness and consultation with the communities that can basically observe what we do and give positive or constructive, if not positive, feedback about the type of research that we do. I think this is very important for us to grow as a team and to grow as a team that becomes useful to the free knowledge communities. And it's not only for us as a team, but for everyone else who is using Wikipedia data. I think in the past 2 years and a half that I have been working at the Wikimedia Foundation, I learned a lot how to disseminate the work and publicize. No, it's not about publicizing, but really making sure that everyone is aware about what's going on, because it really brings back a lot of diverse and constructive feedback that we can reuse and redisseminate further. So it's a nice loop again that can help everyone grow. Yeah.
Transparency, sharing your research and your results.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm sure the people who are listening will treasure this advice, because I'm sure that, as you say, this applies for Wikimedia, of course, but it probably applies for many other organizations that can really benefit from having input into their own work, even in the private sector. So I will stop just for a second to say to everyone who is listening to please share your questions. So feel free to add them as a comment to the Facebook or YouTube platform where you're following us. But I have one more question I want to ask you, and which dives a little bit deeper into your domain. So I know that as in your research work, you're especially interested in the role of images in free knowledge, and you mentioned images before as well. So I think the saying goes that a picture is worth more than 1,000 words, and I wanted to understand from you, what's the role of images in free information? And because the saying, obviously hides something that is very, very true, that we can convey something very easily with an image, and it can reach really everyone. But I wanted to understand, what role do you see it playing in the medium of free information, and how can you help someone who is not a professional editor to find the right image? Because sometimes it's difficult. That there are copyright problems that you can really go wrong when you're picking an image.
Yeah, thank you. I tried to sneak an image word before, because this is a problem that is very close to my heart. So I think there are two things. So first, we have anecdotal evidence that images are very powerful tools to disseminate free knowledge, and that basically can help, especially people who don't speak a given language, to really absorb the knowledge in an article, traditional written Wikipedia article, because images can support learning in general. And also, as a non-native English speaker living in an English-speaking country, I really have evidence of the fact that images can help support multilingual communication, because a lot of times it happened to me that, you just don't know the word and it's used to translate, because there are so many translations. You just show an image and this is, immediately effective. You can communicate the concept. So there are different areas of research in the space of images that we are moving forward. The first one is about really try and quantify the importance of images for free knowledge. So we have some anecdotal evidence. There has been experimental psychology working on the importance of images in instructional settings, but we don't know as of now the importance of images when learning through or when understanding or using Wikipedia. And so there are a set of initiatives that we're working on now to try and operationalize the complex notion of the importance of images for free knowledge into a few initiatives, or a few, say, research directions that can help us getting to that number, or that few numbers that can help us understand the importance of free knowledge. So, for example, we're looking at how images impact the learning, how images impact how much people interact with images, and things like that. And then, so this is about understanding the role of images, because this implies a lot of the initiatives that we are pushing forward on the image front. And then the other aspect is really using technologies to help editors illustrating Wikipedia and sister projects. So again, let me give you some statistics. More than half of Wikipedia articles do not have an image. And I don't know if you know about Wikidata, which is the knowledge base behind Wikipedia, essentially. 95% of the items in that knowledge base do not have an image. And this is problematic for many reasons, because visual content, as we said before, is an important part of the knowledge that we share. And the problem of adding images is not only because some of the images are not easily findable, but it's also because sometimes images are not there. Basically, everything that is on Wikimedia projects should be free to reuse, including the images. And so we have a lot of copyright problems. So a lot of images are out there in the web, but we cannot use them because they don't have the right license. And so essentially through multimodal recommender system, we are trying to develop a system that, given an article, can automatically recommend a set of images that could be good candidates because they are free to use, because they're relevant to the article, and because they are high quality. So, and by doing so, we kind of help editors reducing the space of search that can be gigantic to a few images that they could be good match for articles. And especially we are developing this now. And the first, what I was saying before, the first audience will be newcomers, because one of the most popular tasks among people who start editing Wikipedia is really adding an image, but sometimes they don't know how to find images. And so with these recommendation system, we will provide them with a set of choices for the right image to be added. Giacomo, I can go on forever about images, so please stop me. Yes.
No, okay, this is good. I think I want before we conclude, I wanted to ask you a few rapid fire questions. So, last article you contributed to on Wikipedia.
Last article I contributed to, the last one is not a Wikipedia article, is a meta Wikipedia article. So it's the article that we write on our Wikipedia for research. So I don't know if that counts.
Well, that counts.
If that counts, yeah. So then it's the knowledge gaps taxonomy. Yes.
What do you use Wikipedia for? You mentioned use it for translations to get the image. What do you use? What item do you use it for? I personally would use that for spices.
You mean for?
That you don't know a word and you need to find it.
Oh, I need to find it for spices. No, that's a good point. I think for lately I use this for for herbs. Yeah, plants and herbs, because sometimes you go to the garden center and you have no idea how to translate the name of a plant that you know in your own language. Yeah, that's true. It's same kind of yeah, idea.
And the most interesting slash strange thing you've learned on Wikipedia?
Yes, so this is there is an automatic generator of fan articles in Wikipedia. I think I learned one of the last thing I learned is what is called I think it's called the Paris effect. I don't want to be wrong, but basically is this feeling of disillusions that tourists have when they go to Paris. They imagine Paris as the most beautiful city in the world, and when they get there, they have this sort of disillusion of Paris not being like the paradise city that they were imagining. So there is an article about this.
Okay. I'll check it out. Okay, Miriam, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for sharing a lot about your work at the Wikimedia Foundation, your work as a research scientist, and also these few lost gems that were quite fun. So thank you again for being with us tonight and for being part of the Tech for Good community.
Thank you, Giacomo.
Okay, so I think before we close, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who has followed us during this live event with Miriam, and just remind you that we have a series of events coming up, and a graphic detail of all of them will appear at the end of the streaming. You will be able to find the recording of this event on our YouTube channel. So just type Nesta Italia on YouTube, and you will be able to see this, as well as the previous interviews that we had with other Tech for Good founders and practitioners. Italian subtitles will also be available for the Italian community. So thank you again, and goodbye.